teikiama ir Europos Parlamentui.
In line with the decision of the Seimas, the Statuette of Freedom is also awarded to the European Parliament, one of the EU's main institutions from where voices of defense of freedom resound throughout the world. The European Parliament was awarded the Freedom Prize for its current efforts to consolidate democracy and human rights, for the defense of the right of nations to free self-determination and sovereignty, for the unrelenting efforts towards historical justice, for support to the cause of Lithuania's freedom, and the aspiration of the Soviet-occupied Baltic states towards independence, for the diplomatic assistance to Lithuania that had just restored its independence, and for the contribution to EU integration.
Ir vėl tribūnoje Laisvės premijos komisijos pirmininkė Paulė Kuzmickienė.
Once again, Paula Kuzmickienė, Chair of the Freedom Prize Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just commemorated the participants of the Lithuanian resistance, desperately, although with hope, searching for ways to independence and democracy. We should bear the broader picture in mind, that is the 1956 events in Hungary, the Prague Spring, the Polish Solidarity Movement, Czech Charter 77, and the Memorandum of 45 Baltic nationals, a document signed in the spirit of Charter 77. The memorandum was signed in 1979 by 45 Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian dissidents. The memorandum was a significant document, giving a new impetus to act for the Baltic immigrants in America and Europe, and for those who remained in the grips of the occupation, and encouraging a response of the free world. US President Ronald Reagan signed a Congress resolution designating the 14th of June as the annual Baltic Freedom Day. On the 13th of January 1983, exactly 41 years ago, the European Parliament adopted a resolution referring to the Memorandum of 45 Baltic nationals and condemning the Soviet Union's occupation of the Baltic states. The resolution, followed closely by the KGB, had its repercussions not only in Europe, but also in America and Australia. President Reagan supported the aspirations for liberation of the Baltic states, and the resolution of the European Parliament was widely circled in Swedish, Danish, Finnish, and English. It is worth recalling that the resolution was initiated by 6 MEPs led by Otto von Habsburg, a monarch, a Catholic, a freedom fighter, and a long-standing member of the European Parliament, and one of the architects of European integration. He was among the first in Europe to speak of the unchanging nature of Russian autocracy, urging everyone not to trust neither Putin's eyes nor his soul. He was one of the first to stand for Ukraine, even before the issue of Crimea. He maintained close ties with the Baltic states until his death, urging everyone to resist manipulation with history. The European Parliament has pursued and continues to pursue the same path. The 1991 killings in the Baltic states carried out with the consent of the Kremlin were deemed by the European Parliament as military aggression. The European Parliament has consistently viewed the enlargement of the European Union as a way of defending the freedom, independence and democracy of the European states. This concerns not only the past waves of enlargement and us directly, and we will be celebrating 20 years anniversary of this enlargement, but this also concerns that which we can today refer to as the European East. This concerns Belarus and the European Parliament's consistent support for the Belarusian opposition and its leader, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. This concerns Georgia and the European Parliament's hopes for democratization in the country, as well as the efforts of the MEPs to save the life of Mikhail Saakashvili. This also concerns Moldova and the European Parliament's strong support for its membership of the EU. Finally, but most importantly, this also concerns Ukraine, including the decisions, support, resolutions and reports adopted by the European Parliament, as well as the initiative of individual members of the European Parliament from Lithuania to bring together an international network of parliamentarians to support Ukraine in every possible way. Ms. Metsola, we do not forget the fact that you are the first EU leader to visit Kiev after the Russian invasion. Likewise, we do not forget that the European Parliament followed the example of the Lithuanian Seimas by recognizing Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. We also are aware that the European Parliament recognized the Holodomor in Ukraine as genocide. However, it is no less important to be vocal and proactive when it comes to European remembrance and history. Let me remind you another important fact. In 2019, the European Parliament adopted a resolution on the importance of remembrance, and I commend the MEPs, initiators and drafters of this document today present with us. The resolution has forced Putin to lose his temper, making the Russian ruler to declare that it was apparently absolutely unacceptable that the resolution equates communism with fascism. The Kremlin was irritated by the truth that the Second World War was caused by both Hitler and Stalin following the signature of the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact and its secret protocols that divided Europe. But is that sufficient, though? Is it enough to repeatedly vow never again in the face of Russia's crimes committed today in Ukraine? Maybe we can do more. And this is where we can realize our failure to do one more important job. To this day, we treat the criminal totalitarian regimes of communism and National Socialism differently, and we should properly assess both regimes from the legal and historical point of view. After all, we cannot see the so-called romantic side of communism in some areas while turning a blind eye to the horrific, incomprehensible crimes of the communist regime that killed millions of people. Millions. Today's ongoing war makes us wonder if we did everything to make sure that the war in Ukraine for Western civilization, for all of us, was widely understood and societies stood up for Ukraine and Europe in the fight for their freedom. Western leaders have failed to convince their people of the kind of monster we are dealing here, of the nature of this autocratic state, and of the long-term threats posed by a revisionist Russia. Sanctions, weapons, and their timely transmission to Ukraine are, of course, of paramount importance, but I am convinced that society's readiness to defend European civilization is nonetheless important. And we have to admit that preparedness is lacking. This is also related to neglecting European history and remembrance. The future must be built not only on the basis of future insights, but also on the basis of historical facts and justice for the victims of totalitarianism and autocracies. Memory is built into our souls. But if we lose that part of our souls, we will lose ourselves. That is why the political decisions of the European Parliament and its members, which assess the totalitarian and authoritarian regimes, give meaning to the memory of the victims and draw on Europe's historical conscience as part of our morality. They are of particular importance to us all. They highlight the importance of historical memory for the future of Europe. This is where Europe's true strength and its foundations lie. And they will demonstrate that we will not be torn apart by those who falsify history and those who justify war with falsifications. I believe in what Volodymyr Zelensky says, and that there will be no day after Ukraine. There will only be a day after the war, a day after Putin. And I can hear the European Parliament echoing those words.
Gerbėmieji, 2023 metų Laisvės premijos apdovanojimą Europos parlamentui
Ladies and gentlemen, to accept the 2023 Freedom Prize to the European Parliament, we invite Ms. Roberta Metsola, President of the European Parliament.